Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Camera Tuesday, we're going to talk about Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. So let's dive deep into it. So this ZV-E10 Mark II is basically a APS-C interchangeable vlogging camera. This camera is not focused for photographer that can do a little bit of video. From a company's marketing point of view, this is a camera that is a video camera that can do a little bit of stills. That's all you have to think about it. And it's a quote-unquote low-cost camera. Now, I do feel very bad nowadays. Somehow, $1,000 became a freaking low-cost camera, and the fact that it's in India is expected to cost 90,000 or sometimes even more. So, yeah, that's a very steep price. And yes, it was launched for around the Mark 1 variant, was launched a few years ago for $600+. So, yeah, that's a hefty price increase. However, it has significant improvement from Mark 1. Like Mark 1 was like almost a toy. This is like, okay, we are actually reaching a point where it's like, okay, it justifies sort of its price. Now it's using Z100 battery. Now this is one thing that I truly admire and appreciate in Sony is that they from A7 Mark III days, they had this one new battery format they came up with, Z100, and then slowly that became the standard for all of their lineup. Meaning eventually, I think again, it's from their own point of view, it's far more economical to have one battery SKU for everything. And again, everybody loves it, so it's like, why create new things? And again, it's like, I hate Canon for this. Again, I have to suffer for this because I have Canon cameras. So I'm talking from experience, having multiple batteries, which again, it's your hassle for your own supplier. It's like, hey, I don't have this battery because only few models for this battery sold, and then I have this, a lot of issue. So Z100 is a much more reliable system. Benefit is you buy this, you jump into a flagship Sony, still the same battery. So it's a really good system. So bigger battery, more power, really good approach. 26 megapixel, 4K 60 frame per second with slight crop, 4:2. Now that's the key part, and 10-bit, really important, and it has all eye. Now be mindful, you have to understand, whenever you are talking about cameras like DSLR or mirrorless, you always find the video files to be huge, even though same resolution, same codecs also. Like your mobile phone could be 4K H.265, your camera could be 4K H.265, both could be 30 FPS, but you will find your camera to be like creating gigantic files. Generally, it's because all eye, meaning how many frames is throwing away. So camera captures 30 FPS, that's true captures. Okay, it's taking keyframes as we call it. Tuk, 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 tuk. It's doing that. That's awesome. But here's, we cannot store it. It's huge. So you cannot show that over YouTube and all that. So what do? We take frame 1. We take frame 2. We take frame 3. We take frame 4. So we lock frame 1 and frame 4. Now we take the 2 frames that are in between and we yeet it. We throw away the frame, and then we calculate what was the change, basically how the change happened, and then we create a mathematical formula there. It's like, okay, this is the math. So you have real frame, mathematical interpolation, and that's how you get such a small compact file sizes from your mobile phone. So again, that's really bad because again, you are throwing a lot of data away and just converting into mathematical, and it's a lossy compression. You will not get that data back. So we use all eye. Again, all eye just shrinks the frame itself. So the keyframe is smaller. So instead of, let's say, uncompressed keyframe would be, let's say, 5 MB one frame, it will be like, okay, few KB per frame. So you are still shrinking, but you are not throwing away frames. So now video editing becomes smooth. Why? Because whenever your playhead is going, computer does not get to, okay, let me take this frame, let's calculate it through GPU or CPU, and then create a new frame, that put it in RAM, and then hope for a playhead to play in random. It's a very wasteful system for editing. So that's why all eye is there. Again, that's why you will find out that many times it's like, hey, why DSLR footage are so huge? Even though it's like full HD DSLR, you're like, why the file is huge? All eye. And again, generally mobile phone do not give you 4:2 10-bit unless you activate that setting, or you are in camera pro mode. Those things have that. Now it has flagship SoC. Let this be very clear. Nowadays, the sensor, basically this puppy that you see, that actually sees in camera, it's the cheap part. It's mass produced. What is the most expensive part is the SoC. Now SoC defines the camera limitation. Now what camera companies are doing, it's very sneaky. It's like they have the flagship SoC, and then they're like, we have mass produced the SoC, so that is also cheap, and now we are just software limiting the features. They don't even bother creating new things. Like, hey, take the same SoC. This is the exact same SoC that is used in their flagship A1. From A1 to such a cheap vlogging camera, and they will always give you random reasons. It's like, oh, it can't really do 4K 60 uncropped. It's like, this can. I know it can because you do it in A1. You're just like, but why, how can we differentiate? So This is clever, and be mindful, every company is doing this. It's just so blatant nowadays. It's like, if Bion's XR can do this, why it can't do this in here, even though the whole pixel sensor is smaller? It's one of those things that really boils my blood. It's like, just have 2-3 SKUs, man. Don't have like 10,000 models and then be like, okay, what if we software limit this and then unlock this in this, unlock, then lock this? So what features it has? Well, features wise, it has vertical video format. What does that actually mean? That simply means there is a metadata layer in the video layer that changes the orientation. So if I have to do vertical video, which I do for my shots, I just basically mount the DSLR like this and then take the file into video editing software, rotate 90 degree. And yes, that's all there is to it. It's just a metadata layer that tells the camera it's rotated. Now, like, wait a minute, is that a new thing? Unfortunately, yes, even though all cameras have gyroscopes, like from very long ago, and you must have seen the camera does have orientation change. How the heck it changes? It has a system, gyroscope. It figures out the orientation. Based on that, it changes the metadata layer of image files. But somehow it took them now, like late 2020s, after TikTok explosion, to be like, hey, we can use that function that we had from 1980s to rotate the video file also. So whenever you see it has vertical video, yeah, it's just a metadata layer change. So that it has that, and it has UI elements changing. You remember the old days of Nokia phones? That was the big deal. It can do that. That's why I personally hate all camera companies. Like, they never upgraded beyond 1990s. It's like, whoa, the camera can rotate. I'm like, whoa. Like, we had this in feature phone. We had this, let alone smartphone. We had this in feature phones. So this is genuinely embarrassing to see, and how everybody's like, whoa, the menus rotate. I'm like, it's truly sad. It's like truly sad that it has to be done. And again, that's the primary reason why cameras died. It's not the optics are bad. It's optics are good. It's just that user interface is so hideously 1980s that people are like, I ain't gonna use that. Now it supports 4K 30 FPS, again, vlogging camera. So a lot of people do vlogging streaming. So you can do that. And be mindful, this feature was very heavily requested during the pandemic era. I'm old, I have survived pandemic. So that pandemic required a lot of work from home. So a lot of webcams, and people are like, hey, I have this camera. And they're like, companies are like, yeah, you don't. We don't actually give that feature, useful features, because why would we give useful feature? So, and during that time, there was chip shortage. So companies started to update their lineup, have that basically video to USB converter chip. Unfortunately, because of the shortage, all the Sony cameras, the first generations after the pandemic, got only full HD 30 FPS. Here you get 4K 30 FPS. That means there are people with flagship Sony cameras and they're like, they can only do full HD 30 FPS. You can do 4K 30 on USB webcam, meaning no software requirement on the computer end, meaning your computer already has the drivers for it. You just plug it. Awesome. So that's there. And it has background defocus, which is 100% useless or close to gimmick, because again, if it was a software feature where it's like, okay, I'm gonna detect the optical blur and then gonna amplify that blur, I would have been like, that's awesome. That's like taking background blur of smartphone and amplifying it. That would have been awesome. But it's a freaking software which just changes the setting. Basically, it's aperture priority, nothing else. It's just a fancy button. I'm like, do you really think so low of the people who are buying such a expensive equipment? It's like, oh, they cannot figure out how to adjust aperture. It's like, just go into aperture priority, open the aperture, done. It will auto adjust. That's why I said aperture priority. It will auto adjust shutter speed and basically ISO. So that has that. Why? It can do 4K 60, only a little bit of crop. That's actually good, because be mindful. That's why I said that's why I hate it. Sony A7 Mark IV can easily do 4K 60 without any issue. But they're like, hey, if we did that, why would people buy A1? Even though SoC is the same, and that SoC is handling much higher megapixel sensors, much higher what you call downscaling resolution. It's like, I got this. And I'm like, here it does not got this. No, you are blocking it. So it can do that. Now there is one genuinely useful feature, but again, it's a very hard to use feature, is Cine Vlog. Now Cine Vlog is a feature where you can inject your color profile to it. Now, why would you want to do that? Let's say you're traveling somewhere and you have a particular look. You can shoot a video, create a particular look, put that into the camera itself, that look, the setting file, and voila, every video that you are recording now has that. Now, consequence, it's a baked issue, meaning if the settings were right, you're gonna get a masterpiece out of it. If it was wrong, you can't undo it. It's a permanent system. It's like, that's why cinema camera don't do it and nobody wants to do it. But again, if you are like dealing with this sort of low cost camera, you want to do things in camera, and if your audience, whoever is watching it, is generally watching in a small mobile phone, it does not make that big of a difference. So having the usability advantage is a really critical thing. So that's useful, and that's there, easy to use for social media. It does have that mic capsule. Although one good thing about Sony is that because Sony is selling so much, the hot shoe mount that they have, the interactive hot shoe mount, you can buy DJI mic 2, basically something like this, and that you can directly connect from hot shoe to hot shoe. You will not have a wire. That can be done. So there are some good features, lightweight features. Now there is one very big issue, especially for Indian audience. Indian audience, pay attention to this. This is not made for India. This is way too flimsy in terms of thermal management. Too little plastic. It has too much plastic, too little metal, and it does not have enough design structure where you can dump the heat away. So it will overheat in India, especially if you are taking long clips, small clips. If you are a person who only takes like 5 minutes clip or 6 minute clip maximum, you're gonna have fun in India. But if you're like how I'm doing, 29 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes or 50 minutes, yeah, no. Many people make this mistake. It's like, that's another reason why handycams are still sold, is that handycams can actually work for very long duration. So, or again, you have to buy FX series camera, which is not that expensive. That has a cooling fan that is designed to endure. Like you can run that puppy for hours on end. So, let this be very clear. If you buy this camera, be mindful of that. If you're like, hey, I'm gonna buy this Sony camera, I'm gonna be vlogging with it. Yeah, in winter you can, in summer, good luck. So it's not a very reliable, robust system. People are testing it in 24 degrees Celsius and it's like, it overheats. I'm like, how the heck 24? That's my AC temperature, man. No, it's 27 right now, my AC temperature. Then I realized it's like UK declared heat wave at 25 degrees Celsius. So it's one of those things, like you have to understand. For Western audience, this camera will work. For Indian audience, it's like, bro, it's like you took out of the bag, his camera is like, I'm out. Don't even open the video system. So be very mindful of that. If you're dealing with small clips, short clips, or indoor environment, air-conditioned environment, GG. But anything other than that, it's way too compromised. Cost is too seriously cut. Not having IBIS comes with serious penalty, because again, so all Sony lenses, even the first party lenses, do not have a fixed system where it's like all Sony first party lens has OSS, optical steady shot. So that's not there, meaning you can buy a very high quality lens that does not have optical image stabilization, and optical image stabilization is always superior than software system. So you need optical, and ideally you will have both, basically the lens moving around, sensor moving around, then you get the best result. That's why Panasonic is so good and Canon is so good. Sony's IBIS, again, not as good, but better than nothing. Not having IBIS is really bad, because the only way to compensate for that, if you're like, okay, I'm gonna do handheld, of course, how the heck you gonna compensate? Well, you have to do digital IS. So like, problem solved. It crops in like this, so your frame will go from like this to like this. It crops a lot, so you really have to buy ultra wide lenses. I mean 8mm to 10mm kind of lenses. Only then after crop you will have something useful. So that is a really painful thing for a vlogging camera. For a camera company, again, if Sony was like, hey, all our APS-C lineup has OSS, all our full frame lens has OSS, that's not the case. So it's a really unfortunate cost cutting, so to say. And it has micro HDMI. I'm like, yep, throw it away. Because many times you can use that USB system. People don't like to use it, because again, that USB is generally, your computer does not have power delivery USB sockets. So you may want to run it on USB power. So then like, how the heck you want to capture it? You capture it via HDMI. Now again, HDMI capture is much better, because you control how much compression is applied. So if you have a good capture card inside a computer, or capture device outside of the computer, USB based system, you can get much more fuller image out of the camera. Really good quality, really awesome stuff, more awesome than what you can get out of USB, because you are controlling the compression. Consequences, you have to plug in and plug out. Sony was the first company to realize that full-size HDMI is not that expensive. Actually, it's cheaper than micro HDMI. Let's just use it. And they did that. And I'm very happy for it. In this camera, a vlogging camera, they're like, what if we give micro? It's painful. It's fragile. It breaks. That's why we hate it. That's why everybody loves that, the fact that Sony is adding that. And be mindful, it's not that much dependent on the size. Fujifilm has figured out how to add this. So let that be very clear. Tiny Fujifilm bodies now have full-size HDMIs. So micro HDMI is like, why you're regressing backwards to the past. That's a really bad, because again, if you want to truly use this camera for streaming, even in an indoor environment, it's like, hey, I'm just going to use it as a very good low cost camera because you can have a very large aperture lens, right? You do not need image stabilization. Awesome. You need good autofocus. Sony has very good autofocus. They're awesome. So you can buy like, let's say 10 millimeter f1.8 or f1.2. Awesome. Now you use it. Again, if you plug it, never touch it again, that's awesome. But again, few times you will break it. And yes, HDMI cables that are micro are expensive. So that really bothers me. Another is no EVF. Now, not having electronic viewfinder, like, it's a marketing decision. It's like, hey, people don't use it. No, people do use it the moment they go out in sunlight. They don't use it if they are like, indoors or like in nighttime. The moment you go in outdoor, daytime, you're like, yeah, that screen is useless. This display, all camera displays are beyond garbage. For the price that they are charging, these camera companies are charging, the amount of display you can get from any other brand, like for 10,000 rupee, you can buy a smartphone from all brands, Samsung, Nokia, Motorola, OnePlus, whatever have you. It's super higher quality. You will have 1,000 nits, 2,000 nits. This will barely give you 200 to 500 nowadays in 2024. It's horrendously useless. So now you do not have EVF, so you cannot go back like this. Okay, what about the LCD? LCD is not upgraded. It's a low cost system, so it's horrible LCD. So yeah, it's a really, really painful system. That's why I said, like, I genuinely hate the fact that not even one camera I know so far that has like proper OLED. They are still stuck at LCD ella. It's like, why? So that's there, and it does not have mechanical shutter. Another cost cutting. Like, isn't that a useless thing? Well, again, if you have stacked CMOS sensor, yeah. If you have global shutter, absolutely it's a useless thing. But in another scenario, that's the only way to remove flickering. That's the only way to compensate for slow rolling shutter. You have high rolling shutter, as in like a very low, slow readout speed, because again, sensor is cheaped out. Without mechanical shutter, you are actually compromising it. You will notice it, meaning you're photographing little things, not photographing, you will notice it. So it goes back to the same point. Like, there is a point of cost cutting and there is a over cost cutting. This camera is reached over cost cutting, and this is like FX30. You see like how much attention they are paid. It's like, hey, it pulls in air from the bottom vent, exhaust is out. It has to. And again, it's the same camera, same sensor, same brand, and you can see how easily they have made sure that you have full size HDMI. So there are some serious problems with this. And again, A6700, it has EVF. So LCD is useless in daylight. You use EVF. So what about the competition? Well, here's the deal. This is why I generally recommend people to never buy very cheap cameras, specifically cameras that are way too cheap from their own lineup. So reason for is, if you spend a little bit of money, you will get less buyer's remorse, and buyer's remorse is the worst problem. Why do you think camera companies literally went from like, king of the world to like, why camera sales went like, it's not mobile phone. It's the fact that they never updated, the fact that they never upgraded. Like right now, you can buy this camera and you will be struggling your ass off to transfer video file from your, $1,000 camera to your $1,000 mobile phone. Why? Because who cares? It's like, they're like, but in 1980, we did not have this technology. It's like, we have the technology now. Can you please, for the love of God, transfer file at higher speed? No. Can you transfer raw files? No. Like, that's today. Like, only some camera models have upgraded. And again, it should not be a locked feature, but they're like, but what if we create garbage? So that's why I said, do not buy very cheap cameras. Like, it has way too much cost cutting, and the likelihood of you suffering and regretting it is much higher. I can return it. It's like, are you really going to figure all the problems out in few days? Because after using it a while, you're like, okay, this is what helps me. This is what irks me. It's like, and by that time, I'm pretty sure your, sell back menu would be closed. So that's there. No IBUS, that's a big issue. No fan, again, that's an issue for a vlogging camera. Be mindful. At $2,000, you get a cooling fan in Panasonic for both Panasonic full frame and Panasonic Micro Four Third. Both of them comes with cooling fan. Again, Sony could have done that, but they're like, hey, what will people do with the FX30? It's like, that's there. No shutter, that's again issue. And too much cost cutting. Basically, it's too close to regret, especially for Indian people, especially if you want to do video long term. Again, vlogging camera, you want to do outdoor, you go outdoor, it's like, I'm out, man. The camera will not be trustworthy. Again, sometimes it will work, sometimes it will not work. That's the issue. It's just not trustworthy. And what can you do if you're like, hey, I like the Sony color science, I like the feel ecosystem, all that. And I generally have to say Sony generally have very good ecosystem, battery related, lens related, flash related. The fact that you can have third party like DJI microphone receivers that directly work with it, that is genuinely a good system, no discussion about it. But in that scenario, like I want to buy Sony, if you are a dedicated video guy who wants to do long format video recording, meaning you need to trust your camera, it's like, hey, can you do video for me, buy FX30. If you're like, hey, I do hybrid, but I need bit more oomph, bit more trustworthy, and the probability of using the camera EVF during daytime and IBUS, A6700, far more better. Or again, any of the cameras that are like, in second hand market, but that's up to you. Many people are not comfortable with second hand. Again, I'm also not comfortable, but that's the whole point. And Canon also has some good options, like Canon EOS R8 is also little bit of price, and you get full frame, very robust ecosystem. So that's also there. Or for majority of people who are like, hey, I do not want to spend a lot of money, buy this and you will be happy, because a camera that is better in image quality but horrible in user interface, you're gonna throw that user interface away, because you have to use the camera. Oh, the image quality is awesome. It's like, hey, film cameras are horrible to use, but why people use it? Because there are people whose job it is. There is one person whose job is focus puller. I pull focus. There is one other person, my job is to operate the camera. And the other focus is like, I'm the guy who's framing the system. You see, that's how people can deal with it. You're not gonna do that. You're not gonna be like, okay, I have this one guy who's focusing the camera, one guy who's operating the electronic side of it. That's not how it works. So for majority of humans, just buy this. Basically, Osmo Pocket 3, far more convenient, far more easy to use. And here's the deal, Sony also makes microphones exactly like this, like this is Rode Wireless Go 2. So what does Sony do? It's like, hey, what if we do not integrate? Yeah. What does DJI do? Hey, we have the transmitter. We are selling the camera where people will put the receiver. What if the receiver was integrated? Again, we are using 2.5 gigahertz radio for all of it. Yes, all of them, 2.5 gigahertz radio. Bluetooth is 2.5 gigahertz radio. Wi-Fi is 2.5 gigahertz radio. And your microwave is 2.5 gigahertz radio. All of it is at 2.5 gigahertz. It's an unlicensed band. So we have it. We have 2.5 gigahertz. What if they directly talk? Nobody in Sony thought of that. They make microphones, and nobody is like, hey, wouldn't it be awesome? Like, wouldn't it be super easy to sell our own transmitters? If you're like, hey, you have Sony camera? Awesome. Buy our transmitter. So what about receiver? You don't need it. It's integrated. That's why I said, like, usability matters far more than you realize. If you are having hard time using, again, if it's your job, you're going to put up with it. If it's not your job, if you are trying to figure things out, do not buy things that are hard to use. You will throw it away. You want to feel it. You want to feel the emotion. You do not want to be that burnt person. It's like, ah. You do not want to do like that with your camera. Trust me, I've been there, and yeah, it's just stopped doing photographies. It's tedious, it's frustrating. And again, my camera is not that old, but it still does not have the ability to transfer raw files to my mobile phone. Even though I can do Photoshop, legal, proper Photoshop in my mobile phone, the camera companies are like, but what if we don't give you the raw file? Yeah. So that's there. And again, if you really want to be doing it like really low cost, buy a flagship smartphone. You will be far happier in terms of usability, in terms of quality. And again, if people are consuming your content on that tiny screen, it does not make that big of a difference. And basically, flagships they are a portable computer with camera. So not only you can take the footage, you can edit it, you can rotate it, you can crop it, trim the video file. Heck, you can do actual full-fledged editing. If you have a tablet, people are going full video editing on it. So there's a lot of competition. For majority of people, I will say buy this. Far more convenient, far more higher quality user experience. And again, you can buy the camera, you can buy the microphone, all will work with each other without any issue. You can buy, again, Sony only. You can buy a FX30 if you want to do long-term video recording, A6700 if you want to just like a hybrid ecosystem, or second-hand cameras, or you want to look into Canon EOS R8. Lot of options. For most people, go into a smartphone and go with this. You're gonna be far happier. So this was my presentation with Sony's new low-cost vlogging camera. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please hit the like button, share it amongst a friend. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.